Committee. I am joined by my colleagues, Council Members Buscaino, Rue, and Rodriguez. And before we begin, this is our second meeting for me as chair, but Councilmember Buscaino wasn't there at the last meeting. Not here to chide you on that. I'm here actually. It may have sounded that way, but I actually wanted to start the meeting out by thanking you because you wanted to move on. You've moved on to greener pastures, chairing a different committee, but you've done such amazing work as a chair of this committee, and I'm so thrilled that you're staying on as vice chair of this committee so we can work together on all these public works, and I can learn from you and your expertise as I try to navigate as the new chair. But I really wanted, since you weren't there at the last one, to take a moment at the beginning of this meeting to thank you for your service on this committee and continued interest in service. So with that, we will get started. And Mr. Espinosa, are there any general public comment cards besides the one in front of me? Okay. So we have a whole bunch of cards, but they're all from the same person, and we will call him up for his comments on the different items and general public comment. Mr. Herman, if you would come up, and you have 3 minutes for items and for general public comment.
Now that we're on, first of all, general public comment, and the rude silver-tongued cop doesn't want to pay attention, none of you have what right to say what we want to say under the Brown Act. Multiple violations of the Brown Act, 54950 to 54963, which Michael Hunt has repeatedly said you're a violation of the California Constitution, and now he plans to sue you and the city of Los Angeles for violations of that Brown Act, along with other members of the community and stakeholders. So, thank you, Ms. Grand Jury decides to show up late. Be nice if we had a camaraderie of people to sit in, but you like to have a long lunch. So on behalf of the public,
keep your comments to the agenda items, please.
And then regarding item number 2, gang injunctions. Gang injunctions are unconstitutional. You should put an injunction on the city commissioners for violation of the Brown Act. That's an injunction. And that will be supported by the people, we the people, under the sovereignty of the Brown Act. Right, Miss Attorney? No comment. And then in addition to that, under motion 4, Cedillo and Double Dwarf Englander with the big ears regarding Caltrans. Well, Caltrans has the responsibility to provide us with curbs, ramps, and all the amenities involving ADA issues. Willits versus Los Angeles, Barton versus Sacramento. On behalf of that settlement, fuck you too. And then I go into item number 5, Public Works report relative to the Taylor Yard River Park. Well, what I think about spending $700,000 on a park is a bunch of bullshit. You should spend the money to build homes on the Taylor Yard River Park for the homeless under HHH. And that's just one suggestion. After all, it was the Jews that killed Jesus. And then on item 666 and CD1, Sala Cedillo and the faggot Bonin, who's still on drugs in his closet, talking about what? Designing the intersection of Avenue 41. Leave the fucking intersection alone. Find a solution to repair, replace, and fix all infrastructure regarding sidewalks and streets, curbs, medians, and anything that deals with the AD issues that I brought up under Willits versus Los Angeles. Fuck you.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. We have one more multiple comment cards from Ms. Yvonne Autry. Ms. Autry, if you could come up. You have cards on items 1 and 2. So that will be 2 minutes for 2 items.
It's just 1 minute
cards
per item. I was late in submitting one card for public comment. Is there a general public comment as well?
Okay, make it 3 minutes, including
Oh.
general public comment card.
Thank you so much for that indulgence. First of all, I'd like to state in relative to item number 1, you know what I've noticed in this colorblind society that all of the street cleaners are black people. I'd say 90%, 95%, and I know from experience a lot of them were once fulfilling community service requirement for past felonies or misdemeanors or whatever that requirement was. So in this colorblind society, in the hidden civil engineering of the homeless on Skid Row and the predominantly black street cleaners and the predominantly Hispanic construction workers, even under Trump, I do see again this marginalization and this hidden agenda, which is an all-white society. Hispanic people, Latin people look more Caucasian and I think are less offensive to certain white supremacists or even some Latin people or black people that have become very good. They're in the house and they're not considered problems or leaks or party poopers or terrorists as I have been labeled, because I simply speak and express myself in defense of my right to be a woman living alone, not a prostitute, not to be herded into the street. With this new modern technology, these electronic weapons are being used to persecute people like me. We're called targeted individuals. That being said, relative to number 1, I'm bringing that to the attention so the liability is such that this is not a colorblind society. Of course, that was sarcasm. This is very much still a class system, not just a white supremacist class system, Zionist, Jewish, and predominantly male-dominated patriarchal society. And misogyny is very real. Of course, attacks perpetrated against women like myself simply because I persist, and I'm not a witch in being a single black woman living alone. All right. I'm respectable. I'm not in the street, and I don't appreciate, these attacks on my person, persecution with this electronic weapons, proliferating organs for Israel, and the experiments that are being perpetrated against black people. Also, relative to gangs, I know I have a few friends that are incarcerated. Their DNA is being extracted. I know about the civil engineering. Again, some people, unfortunately, just like cannibalize our people, the melanated people. It's like a vampirism, quite literally. I'd like, again, for the record, for any monies that is available, instead of maintenance of this status quo, and read a book called Schooling in Capitalist America, which will validate what I'm saying. I want reparations, 40 acres and a mule. I think more jobs should be given to black people outside of these slave positions, because you're returning to an all-white society of white privilege.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Unless there's an objection from my colleagues, I'd like to move items 4 and 6 on consent. Seeing no objections, it's been moved. So items 4 and 6 will be taken on consent. That brings us to item number 1. Mr. Espinosa, would you please read item number 1 into the record?
Joint reports from the Department of Transportation, Information Technology Agency, and the Bureau of Street Services, as initiated by the motion from Council Members Bonin and Buscaino, relative to an update on the efforts to develop digital street sweeping routes. This has also been referred to the Transportation Committee.
Right, and we have Ken Hustings from Transportation, Jennifer Banos from ITA, Chi-Ming Gong from Street Services. This is one of those projects. It will be a great example of departments working together, and it's taken a little longer than expected, but I'm glad that a lot of the details are worked out and that we can move forward on something I think that our constituents will really appreciate. So if you could provide a brief overview of the project, of how we're going to reduce street sweeping tickets.
Absolutely. Again, Ken Husting, LADOT Parking Management. And so I'm pleased to be here this afternoon, joined by ITA and Bureau of Street Services, to present a proposal really to develop a pilot program where we're digitizing our street sweeping routes, establishing communication between the street sweepers and our parking handheld units, parking enforcement handheld units, and also to create a notification system whereby we're able to notify people either by text message or email when it's okay to park. In other words, the street sweeper has passed and it's now okay for you to park your vehicle instead of having to wait for that entire period, which is normally blocked off, say for instance 2 hours to be able to park. And so we've gone to a point where we believe that we can establish this pilot program in about 8 to 10 months. And it'll be a 6-month pilot program at a cost of $573,000. The pilot program is proposed to take place over on Woodland Hills and also West Los Angeles. And depending on the success of that pilot program, we would then hope to take it citywide in a phased approach. And so that's it in a nutshell. I will offer a chance to my colleagues. Apparently they're content with the brief description, so I welcome any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. One of the things that concerned me when I was reading through some of the report is that there's an estimate of a loss in parking citation revenues, which seems steep and a pretty wide gap between 4.5 million and 11 million. And I wanted to dig a little deeper on that because I'm skeptical. And the reason I'm skeptical is because it sounds to me that that's just an amount of parking tickets that we normally get at those locations. But I would think if the parking enforcement wasn't going to go to the locations because it had already been swept, they would go somewhere else and be generating tickets. So is this number based on an assumption that they're not doing anything? I mean, let me reframe it. How did you come up with these numbers, and what do they really mean?
Okay, so really what it is based on a theoretical number of citations based on, for instance, 25% capture rate or even higher. We actually don't really have a good estimation of what that loss would be. This is just a wide range. But what we're suspecting is that our parking enforcement officers will still be going to the different areas and citing because some people will not comply. But we're hoping as the compliance increases, that our officers will be able to be redeployed somewhere else and capture different violations. And so what the pilot program is we're hoping to get out of the pilot program is to find out just how big that impact would be. Right now, this is all theoretical, just based on here's the most citations that you can capture, and if there's a 50% capture rate, 25% capture rate. So we're hoping to get a better sense after we do the pilot program.
Okay, I guess we'll see how it plays out in the pilot program. But my hope would be if someone would normally be writing tickets, during a 2-hour block, and the street sweeper comes during the first 15 minutes, then that person isn't just going to go to Starbucks for the next hour and 45 minutes. They're going to go somewhere else, and that the actual and I know that that's the case. I'm being facetious to make the point. But this is the point of doing a pilot program. We'll actually see how some of this plays out, and that's appropriate. That number jumped out at me, and I'm inherently skeptical of it.
I've heard different arguments that should be higher, arguments that should be lower, but really we're hopeful that as the compliance increases, that we can redeploy them to other areas, but we'll find out.
Right. And in terms of long-term funding, I know that as the pilot moves forward, are the departments thinking about where long-term funding would come from or how that would be organized?
So we're still trying to figure out the funding for the program, even the pilot program, as well as the long term. And we're working closely with the mayor's office and also CD11 on where that would come from. But something that was suggested by Councilmember Martinez was that we submit, at least for the pilot program, an innovation fund request. And I heard some support from your staff that this may be a good candidate. And so we're hoping the money will come from, or a bulk of it will come from the innovation fund. And then we're also looking at potential sale of property that was already in place and redirecting some of the money to potentially pay for the remainder of this project.
Okay. And then the other thing that jumped out at me, and I'll move to my colleagues, was that is there a time lapse, like after the street sweeper goes by? In the ideal world, the way this program should work is if you're a resident and you see the street sweeper go by, you should be able to just park right away. But Mr. Herman, please limit your outbursts, or don't limit them, just don't do them, please. So if you're able to park right behind it, but my understanding is that the technology right now doesn't really allow for that, that there's this time lapse, and I'm wondering why that can't be built in. It's sort of the common sense thing. If you're writing a ticket and you see, it's one thing if you see the line go around a car, you know that car's been there. But if you don't see the line and somebody just parked there, you wouldn't write them a ticket just because the technology hasn't caught up.
Actually, I'm glad that you brought that up because that is something that I did want to address. So during the pilot program, we're going to figure out what that time lapse should be. The main reason for that time, the gap between when the streeper goes and notification system sends out it's okay to park, has to do with parking enforcement. So when there's a block that, say, for instance, has 10 violators, there's no possible way for the parking enforcement officer to be able to cite the people in time because the street sweeper is moving so fast. And we don't want it to create a situation where the parking enforcement goes to the same block and every single time only is able to capture that first person or that second person. And so what we're thinking about is that there needs to be a little bit of additional time for the parking enforcement to be able to cite the people that have violated. And that may either be a 1-minute delay, 2-minute delay, or it could be after the street sweeper has completed that block and then that block is released. So we're hoping through the pilot program to actually find out what is the perfect solution. Is it a time? Is it, after it clears the block? Or maybe it's something that we just need to get rid of altogether.
Yeah,
But we're going to find that out during the pilot program, which really kind of goes back to something that we discussed in Transportation Committee, which was a very robust public outreach program. Because when this goes out, the logical assumption is exactly what you said, that as soon as it passes, I should be able to move my car right there. And so for at least the pilot program, we're going to have to make sure that the public is aware that they have to get that notification. And by signing up with ITA through the 311 program, that they either get the text message, they get an email, or they can go online and see that, okay, it's safe to park. So we're going to try to make it as friendly as possible, but public outreach is going to be key.
Might I suggest maybe something to the effect of the enforcement person has to observe the vehicles there prior to the time. Maybe you build in a 10-minute window where they can still write the ticket during the 10 minutes that pass, but if they write it past the time of the street sweeper, they have to attest, and maybe there's just a box that says I attest that they saw the vehicle there prior to the street sweeper. Because that would give you the flexibility with the technology, but it would also infuse a little common sense and allow some discretion where, yeah, there's 10 cars there, they observe it, they can start writing the tickets, street sweeper can go by, they can finish their job, but
And that's something that we're going to be working on too, as well as the ability to have the handheld unit prevent the officer from actually writing a street sweeping ticket if it was a certain time after the street sweeper went by, because we know there's no way that person should be issuing a citation for that.
But you have a pop-up that says, if it's past that, do you swear that this car was there beforehand or something like that?
Yeah, and we're going to be building that into the system.
Thank you, Ken. Chi Ming Gong for the Bureau of Street Services. During the pilot, we also want to assess some of the other operational needs that are going to occur when the street sweeper goes by. There are times when he's sweeping in the middle of the run and he's going to need to refill on water, say. He's going to need to take some time to go get refill on water, and just because he's gone doesn't necessarily mean that the block is available for parking. There's also going to be times where he needs to actually empty his hopper of debris. They normally empty the hopper at least 3 to 4 times per route.
Empty the what? I couldn't hear.
3 to 4 times per route. So they may have a hopper full of debris that we're going to have to deal with, and he's going to have to go run to a centralized location, dump his hopper, and then come back to work. So there's some of these little ins and outs that we're going to have to work out during the pilot.
Colleagues? Ms. Martinez.
I'm sorry. We talked about this item in committee last week, and we spent a lot of time between how are people going to be made aware that the street has already been swept so that they can go ahead and park and not get a ticket. But I also asked about how are we going to make it easy for people to complain or perhaps contest a ticket if they feel they were wrongly ticketed after the street has been already swept. So making sure that we keep up with the technology. I don't think I heard an entire good enough explanation on that piece. And then the second thing that I did not ask last week as well was how do you intend to measure this pilot program after it's done?
Okay. Well, the first one on the citations, if anybody was cited illegally or they felt they were cited illegally, they're allowed to contest the citation. We'll also have weekly, I think it's probably even multiple times during the week where we'll reconcile and see if there was any kind of citations issued in error. And we do that now whenever a street sweeping route was canceled. We go through and check to make sure that we didn't issue any citations. If we did, those are dismissed immediately. And so we'll continue to do that. And obviously ITA will be taking comments on the system. If something's not working correctly, we'll find out about that. So I think between the citations, again, the complaints through citations, and then also through ITA, we'll have a better sense of, is this actually doing what it's intended? And as far as the second one, I'm sorry, what was the second one?
How do you intend to measure its success, the success of the pilot?
So we have in the report about 7 metrics of what we believe will be a successful pilot. And so one, can residents subscribe or unsubscribe to the notification? The residents can check if they're able to park based on the location. Parking enforcement handhelds will be able to query a cloud-based server to actually find out if the route's been swept or not. We'll find out if there's communication issues between the GPS device and reporting back to the city. Also be the ability for the GPS device to be able to transmit addresses and streets correctly. And there's a couple more. Accurately identify the block entered by the traffic officer, and also that the conduit or citation processing company is able to accurately reflect the response from ORPAC. So all of these are really focused on customer and also the technology issue to make sure that's working properly. And so if all these fall into place, then we feel that we have a successful system.
And Mr. Chair, my last question is, I'm not sure we covered this in committee or not last week, but did you describe the difference between this pilot and what the Bureau's already doing online?
I don't think we did.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman. No, I don't believe that was articulated at the last meeting. The difference between this pilot and what the current arrangement we have with the Bureau of Street Services and Department of Transportation, that happens. The current system right now happens every morning, where we have staff that comes in at the Bureau side, and they report to the Department of Transportation before 7:30 a.m. all those routes that are relaxed enforcement are requested. That doesn't tell them when a person can actually come and park in that same window. Say we have an 8 to 10 route, and the sweeper comes by, hits the first 7 blocks of that route. He's done by 9:30, or he's done by before 9 o'clock. The system that we have in place now does not allow people to park before the 10 a.m. time. So that's a major improvement that this pilot is meant to address. Is if you're at the beginning of the route, the sweeper goes by, you shouldn't have to wait till 10 o'clock.
You
And
should
that's
be
what
able to park as soon as the street
hopefully,
sweeper's already done. Yeah. Okay.
staff feels that we believe every 2-hour window, maybe the first half will be done, and that's probably where the biggest benefit will be.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question. In the report, you indicated that the public notification system operated through 311 would register residents and use the external mass email service to notify affected residents. Can you give us a little bit more discussion about that?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to
And how that
ITA.
works?
Sure. Jennifer Banos from ITA. So the way we envision the design is that, we will capture the information from the GPS system, right, in real time, and then we'll determine, again, the information that's being passed from the GPS need to decide whether they actually swept the street or they just drove by. So that information is also key, and it needs to be determined by the OPEC system. Then we'll take that information and store in the cloud, and then both the handheld unit from the traffic ticketing officers as well as a constituent will utilize the same information. That way they will minimize the dispute in regards to the timing issues. Now, the way we envision the subscription is that they will use my LA 311 app or the portal to go ahead and subscribe by the address. They can enter it by address. They either click on the map or they enter it manually. And then we will then register that, store that information. When the GPS data sends back and said, okay, that street, the address has been swept, then we will push that notification via email again or by text, depending on how the user wants to be notified. We will then send out the mass messages to that block of street that has been cleared to everybody who subscribed to that address or that block. That's how they receive the information.
So you hope it's going to be real time
Yes.
eventually? Okay.
Again, as real as we decide what the
Right.
threshold is going to be.
Now, as far as subscription, it seems like the individual, even though I have a 311 app, I have to actually subscribe to get a text message or an email, right?
That's correct.
Is there any way you guys could consider, so it seems it's more of an opt-in system right now.
Yes.
Have you guys considered an opt-out system, meaning that if I have 311, everyone on 311 gets that notification unless I opt out? Because if we're going to use real-time and location services, maybe you send everyone on that block who has 311 instead of asking them to again sign up again.
That can be done. It's an option for us. We can decide how we want to implement it. Yes.
So if you could consider that, and if you could maybe in the next update see if you could have a opt-out process versus the opt-in, because it's already not everyone uses 311. It's difficult already, and I'm assuming 311 and the notification system is not the only way. You guys are thinking of other ways to notify residents as well, right?
Well, at this
Or-
point, the pilot will actually focusing on my LA 311.
It's
users.
only my 311, right?
Right. And also, yes,
The web.
the web. If you subscribe it via the web, then it can be just an email. Then you don't need to be a my LA 311 users.
So is this pilot just for that piece?
Right now, we're only looking at through my LA 311 app and my LA 311 portal. Yes.
So, I mean, after this pilot project is done, I mean, I would hope that, and I'm sure that your department's going to have some sort of educational campaign or notification through press releases to let people know that whatever rules come out, after they leave, or whether we shorten the time or however it is, you'll notify other people for those people who don't use 311.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. And actually, as part of the marketing program for this program, we actually will have to join with DOT and Street Services in regarding how do we communicate, how do we market, how do we communicate this project or the pilot with the community.
Additional questions? Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and happy to partner with Mr. Bonin on this item before us. Feel that, oftentimes our departments, they work in silos, and it takes technologies to start talking to each other, and our residents deserve much better, and we do know that by using applications such as this one, we'll create more efficiencies. I can, for one, experience every Wednesday morning, I cannot park in front of my gym between the hours of, I believe it's 6 and 10. And I see our amazing DOT officers just hovering over 7th Street in downtown San Pedro. But oftentimes, when we see the street sweeper pass through early between, say, 6 and 7, between the hours of 7 and 10, folks still cannot park in front of that area. So, with technologies now in place, we can do better, and I know this pilot program will serve our city well. Like our chairman indicated, what stood out in this report was the loss of general fund dollars. But at the same time, I know we can, by creating more efficiencies, we can redeploy our DOT officers throughout our respective communities so that they can address the quality of life issues like enforcement of cars stored on streets, oversized vehicle enforcement, and after hours and weekends. We can redeploy officers, traffic officers for weekends and special events even more so. So looking forward to hearing how this pilot program works. And I'm hoping other departments can tune in and really take advantage of the technologies that are in place today to create more efficiencies so our city runs more efficient and overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions, colleagues? One last quick question. Will the signage that's going to be at the pilot program, will it be different? I mean, we have all this other notice, but will there be something literally on the streets that are being piloted that says this is a pilot street, check this website, or something to that effect?
To be honest, we haven't even given thought to what that would look like yet, whether or not it's going to be a sign or if we're going to be doing door-to-door flyers. We know there's definitely going to be a press event. We know that it's going to be advertised on the web. We're talking about email communication, but we haven't got to that detail yet.
Well, I guess I, for one, would urge some sort of signage, even if it's paper or temporary or something that because a lot of people who may use the street may not live on that street or may not be captured by whatever outreach, but everybody who uses that street is going to look at that sign.
And I think that's a good idea, especially considering a pilot program area. So we're going to be very open to many ways of getting the word out of what's going on and how to be part of the program.
Great. All right. Great. So we're going to recommend that we approve the recommendations in the joint report, the ones that the Transportation Committee did, and also include some of the recommendations we just discussed, including in the process the officer's ability to use their own discretion to determine not to issue tickets, regardless of what they've seen, and the things that we just discussed to be part of it. Is that clear enough, Mr. Espinosa, or do I need to spell it out further? Your microphone. Sorry.
Which other ones would you like to have?
So the recommendations in the joint report and the additional recommendations in terms of allowing the officers to have some process for discretion, dealing with that time window when the street sweeper has passed and it may or may not have clicked into the app. The real time.
Very clear.
Okay. Without objection, so ordered. Thank you very much. We're excited about this program.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 2. Mr. Espinosa, would you please read that one into the record?
Item number 2 is a verbal report from the City Attorney relative to an update on the implementation of the gang injunction settlement in Christian Rodriguez et al. Versus the City of Los Angeles.
We have Michael Amarian from the City Attorney's Office, Robert Sainz from EWDD. Thank you both for being here. Just to laid out in March of 2016, the council approved a unique settlement for the gang injunction. Those of us in Budget Committee, we heard about that. It's a big deal, though, in terms of how things are going to be different in the future, and so we wanted to get an overview of the terms and how the city is implementing it and planning on implementing it moving forward. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm here, as you said, joined by Robert Sainz from EWDD to bring you up to speed on where we're at. I'm happy to report that in June of this year, the notices and claim forms were sent out to the over 5,000 claim or class members, and that in the time since those went out in June, we have received approximately 223 claims, and of those 223 claims, 220 have been approved. And following that approval process, last week we have begun sending out approval letters to these individuals, and they will then bring those approval letters along with instructions on how to access services to the various WorkSource service centers throughout the city to be able to take advantage of what really is a landmark settlement in addressing the issues relating to gang violence and the cycle of gang membership. So in addition to that, we've also begun the process of evaluating petitions for removal from the gang injunctions. I believe we've received approximately somewhere between 150 to 200 applications, petitions to be removed from the gang injunctions themselves. And so our office, in conjunction with LAPD, is now working to evaluate those removal petitions. And as the settlement lays out, there's a process for somebody who is whose petition is denied by LAPD and by the city to then seek an independent determination by a magistrate judge here in the city.
But that process hasn't started yet. I mean, we're just getting them in at this point.
Correct. So we got those forms in this week. That starts a 90-day process that we have, a 90-day evaluation period we have to look at those petitions and decide whether or not we're going to grant them. And if we don't, then that puts the ball back in their court to be able to apply to the judge and petition the judge for relief.
To help us understand the numbers, you said 223 applications and 150 applications for gang removal. But what are the bigger numbers? I mean, how many folks are actually eligible for the settlement overall, and how many folks potentially could be asking to be removed from the gang injunction list?
So we sent out 5,567 notices to individuals.
I'm sorry, the acoustics are terrible.
Sure.
Here. What was that number?
5,000.
5,000.
567. Now, of the 5,567 notices that went out with claim forms, 31% of them, or approximately a little bit over 1,700, were returned to us for non-delivery. And it's important to keep in mind that a lot of the population, target population, may be somewhat unstable in terms of their living addresses, and so we're making every effort we can to keep our service list updated. And when we get information that leads us to believe that a potential class member is, or not a potential class member, but that a class member is potentially at a different address, we will make every effort to reach them there as well. So it's a constant evaluation process in that regard. And I'm in constant communication with the third-party claims administrator that's responsible for overseeing the transmittal and reception of documents on this case. And so I speak to that woman on a weekly basis to make sure that this process is moving along as smoothly as possible for everybody.
Follow-up? Sure, Ms. Martinez.
How long do we have? What is the deadline by which we have to hear back from the person receiving the notice?
They have
I don't remember that in budget.
They have up to 4 years to respond. So the city appropriated.
But when did we start mailing out the notifications?
We started
March
mailing
of this year?
June of
June
this
of
year.
this year. So they have 4 years to respond.
Correct.
And
And-
4 years to go through the appeal process if we were to reject their application?
Yes.
Or does the clock start again?
I'll have to take a closer look at that, but the settlement covers a 4-year period. We've provided for people to petition for removal throughout that period.
So that's the other thing. So to petition for removal of the gang injunction, but does the same apply for folks that want to apply for services as well?
Yes,
Okay. So they have to do all of this within the next 4 years
correct.
of getting noticed.
Correct. What the city appropriated was between $1.125 and $7.5 million every year for the next 4 years to go towards the job training and workforce service component of this. In addition, there's $150,000 that's been appropriated for every year to be put towards tattoo removal services.
And my last follow-up question is, so the 1,700 that you got a non-delivery response for, what else do we have to do to continue to notify these 1,700? Are we mandated by the courts to continue to try or to look for forwarding addresses, or what else do we need to do in that regard?
We don't need to do anything else. At this point, we have fulfilled our obligation under the settlement agreement, but in good faith, we're still going to make sure that that if we get information that somebody is at a different address than what we have, that we will make sure that they have every opportunity to avail themselves of the benefits of the settlement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And if they hear by word of mouth, they're still eligible. Their eligibility is the same.
Correct. And I think it's also important to remember that this settlement only applies to people who had been served with 26 of the more than 26 gang injunctions that are in place in the city. So it really applied to a subset of the gang injunctions that the city has issued.
Ms. Rodriguez, I know you had a question. And then
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is on the nonprofit organizations that are designated. Have there been organizations that were specifically designated for the training programs, or do they get to opt into what might be of interest to them?
I'll let Mr. Science handle that component of it.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Robert Science, Assistant General Manager, Economic and Workforce Development Department. So first of all, I really do want to thank the City Attorney and City Council and the Mayor for actually having this novel approach of setting aside the money for actual services. But I really do think we can hit the folks that really need the services. So as a part of the settlement, we use as our basis as our work source centers as a way of intake. So all 16 of our work source centers is a part of the system. In addition to that, we added 8 of our centers that are working with the LA RISE program that's specifically around reentry and homeless. So that way we have a broad range of services. I brought a listing here of all entry points, and they did receive this as a part of their approval letter. And it's really up to them. They could choose any one of these centers. It's not restricted by geography, is not restricted by interest. So if they want to go to Homeboy, if they want to go to Chrysalis, Conservation Corps, some of our best service providers in the city are a part of our system. They would do an assessment there, and we customize this program for their particular interests. So if they're interested in being an entrepreneur, and a legal entrepreneur, then they can go into entrepreneurial training. If their interest is to be into driving, truck driving, a commercial driver, we'll do that. We also have the flexibility is that if they want to go back to school, to pay for community college and up to the Cal State registration. So they have the ability to do that. They have support services is also a key part of this. So if they need tools, if they need books, if they need boots, whatever they would need to get them into the workforce. But the hallmark piece of this is that we set aside 400 hours for subsidized employment. And because one of the things that we know that for this particular population, the hardest thing is getting employers to take a chance on them. And if they have an interest, to go into a particular field, we could work with an employer to subsidize their first 400 hours of employment. So that way it's a shared risk between the employer and ourselves. So we're really stripping away any excuse from folks to succeeding.
Thank you. And the services that are available, are there differences between class members, or all services are available to all class members?
All services are available to all class members, and it really, I think because we were able to provide such a broad range of options on this menu, it really enables everyone in Robert's shop to be able to tailor their services to the needs of every particular claimant. And I think that's really what makes this a unique approach, is it's not a one-size-fits-all. We recognize that some people are going to need more help than others, and fortunately, they're equipped to be able to provide that level of custom, tailor-made service.
Martinez, go ahead.
Something just occurred to me. Can you break down by council district where most of the claims are coming from? And the reason I ask is just want to make sure that we are geographically covering the needs of folks who are going to need the access to these services. So, for example, if no one else wants it, but I want to know, in my district, how many of the 5,563 notices that were eligible to get off the injunction list are in my district?
We can do that.
Okay. And I want to make sure that I have the service providers to be able to provide for them as well.
It's a great request. I think we all would love to see that and how it breaks down.
And we also are passing out a fact sheet that we would ask you to actually distribute through your council offices and your social media. So folks that might not or might have moved and think that they're eligible could actually have that information.
And does EWDD require any additional resources to address the responses, or are they pretty well covered under this?
Right. Through the Budget Committee, you did set aside funds for us to actually start the program in last fiscal year. So right now we have all of the contractors ready to go and under contract. We do have money set aside in the UB, so we'll probably be coming back to you in the first quarter, depending on the volume, if we need to be able to move money to particular areas that have a higher volume. We do know the San Fernando Valley and South Los Angeles are two of the areas that will probably have the highest concentration. So we might have to move some money around, but we'll come back to you with a report on that.
Move money that's already set aside in the UB.
So money is already set aside in the UB.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Sure.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Robert, based on the projected closure of the location in Pacoima, have there been conversations about an alternate site that could still help to facilitate providing this very needed service in the Northeast?
So we're committed not to leave Pacoima. EDD, the state EDD might leave, but we won't leave the Pacoima site. So we're in the process of finding a site in Pacoima.
Okay.
Or or in the very near proximity.
Okay, thank you.
Colleagues, any additional questions? No.
If I can,
Ms.
Mr.
Cannon.
Chair, I know you mentioned somewhat of a small percentage. We just launched this in June, right, of those who responded. I'm anxious to hear I know the job placement is moving forward, Robert, but also one of the significant parts of the settlement was the tattoo removal. And of those who've responded, who are we contracting with on the tattoo removal?
Homeboy Industries.
Fantastic.
So, right,
Good to hear.
and which has a long history of being able to do this. And their limiting factor was pro bono. So we're working with them under a contract basis to reimburse them at a fair market value of the tattoo removal, so they'll be able to expand their services.
Very good.
Are they the only ones? Like I know Providence, the two nuns, yeah, the sisters. What are their names? They do a great job. It was Sister Karma, yes.
Yeah, and we can definitely explore that as part of the subcontract. Yeah.
I don't know if they still do it, but in the Valley, that was one of the go-to.
I think Providence still
Providence probably still
does it, and they're.
But we should do that as opposed to having people drive all the way to.
Right. I would love to have the information. We could follow up with them.
Us Valley people sometimes don't like to drive.
It's a long way.
If I can, Mr. Chair, I would just encourage a quarterly, biannual report on this to come to see the progress being made here. This is an important settlement, turning lives around, and I, for one, can attest to. I was on serving these notices, these injunctions in my senior lead officer days, and I'm hopeful that we don't have to go through another settlement similar to this. So I'm hoping that through this lawsuit that all provisions in the gang injunctions and the process more broadly have been reviewed carefully, because that's something that we should have avoided from the onset. But it is what it is, and I feel that we can take this opportunity to really turn lives around. And this is a city of second chances, and hoping these individuals take advantage of what's before them.
It's a great example of and I give the city attorney's office a lot of credit in terms of how they crafted the settlement of doing it in a way that isn't just another payout that makes us want to pull our hair out. It's actually a settlement that deals with the underlying problem. So I think we're all thrilled about that, and I take your suggestion. We will ask you again for updates on a regular basis. We'll figure out schedule-wise how often we can do it, but it's something all the committee members are interested in, and we will definitely be following up and asking for further reports. So if there's no other questions, this is a discussion item. We don't need to take any action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it. Before we move to item 3, I just want to I just got a late card from Deborah Waz about item 6. Now, we've already taken up and approved item 6 on consent, so I wanted to make sure you weren't waiting around. Mr. Herman, please stop interrupting. One more interruption, we're going to have to ask you to leave. So, Ms. Waz, just so you don't feel like you have to wait around for the whole meeting, we've approved that item. Are you Ms. Waz? And it's already been approved by this committee. We did that right at the beginning of the hearing, so it's good to go, and we all unanimously approved it. So you're welcome to stay for the rest of the hearing, but I didn't want you to be waiting. Okay. So with that, we will move to item number 3. Mr. Espinosa, would you read that into the record, please?
Item number 3 is a verbal report from the Bureau of Street Lighting relative to the Bureau's top priorities.
Great. We have our own Ed Ebrahimian, Director of Bureau of Street Lighting, here with us to share your priorities, your top priorities, and what we should know.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, council members. It's my pleasure to be here today. I'm also joined with my 2 AGMs, Norma Isahakian and Megan Hackney. And I have Eddie here. So you have this handout with you. So with each one of the handouts, I have a map that will show the citywide effort regarding that program. So I would like to go through the handout one page at a time and then Eddie will help us with the maps.
Happy to do that. And colleagues, on these updates, which I do each department, on a quarterly basis or when appropriate, if you have a question on a particular item as we go through it, just catch my eye and we'll get those questions out. You'll also, at the end of it, can go back to anything.
Yeah.
But don't stand on ceremony waiting for the end. If there's, as we go through them, if it's relevant, just catch my eye and jump in. So go ahead.
Okay, so on the first page, we have our LED citywide conversion. I just wanted to give you an update. We've converted 180,000 of streetlights in the city of Los Angeles to LED. That's approximately 81% of all the streetlights. And with the program that we have in place, we'll be completing every single streetlight that we have in the city, whether it's high voltage or not, by end of fiscal year 2021. So in 4 more years, all the streetlights in the city of Los Angeles will be LED. What is left today is majority is our decorative fixtures. We've converted all the modern fixtures already. So we're going through that process. 4 more years, everything will be converted to LED. To date, we are saving approximately close to $10 million annually on the energy side and also on the maintenance side, which is the last page. I'll show you the impact of the LED. So that's item number 1. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Or, Mr. Chair, how do you want to do it? Should I go through it?
Just go through them and we'll
Okay.
jump in on an item by item, or we'll jump in at the
All
end.
right.
So we try to be fairly casual on this type of presentation. So go ahead.
So page 2, we call it TULIP. It's Tunnel and Underpass LED Lighting Program. We started this program a year ago, and we identified 300 tunnels and underpasses throughout the city. And we said we'll have a 3-year plan. We converted already 100 tunnels and underpasses in last fiscal year. We have another 100 this year and 1 more 100 the following year. The map here shows all the conversions that we've done throughout the city. For the program, we usually connect with the council offices and we get your priorities and we basically progress with the priorities that we receive from the council offices to put them in the program.
And how many, as a percentage, you're going to do all of them, or is it how?
It's everything. 300 is all the tunnels and underpasses that we identified. So in 2 years, we will be completing all the lighting that are underpasses and tunnels to LED, meaning it will be more reliable, it will be actually a whiter color, and it will be, I guess we will save energy also as we're converting to LED.
No, I was wondering if there's ever a synergy with doing a camera, like there's certain tunnels, like the Shirley Tunnel in my district, which has had a number of safety issues, and it connects a community to the Ventura Boulevard side. And I've often thought that we need to have, in addition to better lighting in that tunnel and other tunnels, a camera or two, so that to deal with some of the safety issues that are happening. Is there an advantage, or should we be looking at a way to, on certain tunnels like that, to do cameras at the same time that we upgrade the lights?
I think, Mr. Chair, it's a great idea. We have some cameras. The only cameras, by the way, that we approve to be attached to street lighting fixtures throughout the city are the ones that are being monitored by the police department. So the whole idea of cameras is fantastic, but then we need to have monitoring of those cameras, and that's where maybe police department will come in. I'll be more than happy to reach out to them and to see how we can make it work. I think it's possible.
I'd love to do that for those some particular spots, but even more so, I'd love to figure out systemically how we can make this sort of plug and play, so that we have, because this is going to be true on a lot of, particularly the tunnels,
right,
throughout the city where there are safety issues, and building in a camera mechanism could make a difference.
Again, I think funding is an issue, but the police department, I think police department has the funding for cameras as they come to us to install them in certain areas of the city because of the crime. So I think this would be a perfect example to work with them and to see whether we can do the same thing on the tunnels also. I'll be more than happy to look into it. Reach out to the police department.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So the next page, one of our most popular programs, page number 3, is the small cell communication devices that are being co-located with street lighting poles throughout the city. It has been extremely popular, and actually right now we are overwhelmed with all the cell phone companies. As part of the next year's budget, I'm sure we're going to come in with another budget package to be able to work with all of them. We have Verizon, we have AT&T, we have T-Mobile, we have different consultants who are working with all the cell phone companies. The map here actually shows the installations that we've done throughout the city. The red is what we've done with the gas company, which is completely separate, approximately 500 installations we have on, again, street lighting poles throughout the city. Those are just communication devices for the gas meters, and that program has been completed. But the rest are the ones that we are currently working. Last fiscal year, I think we installed 423 installations, co-location installations with different companies. Cell phone company.
23 a month or something, or
423 the whole year, the whole fiscal year. So the program that they have, they've come to us. They're looking at approximately 3,000 each cell phone company. So we have ways to go. Those are all small cells. It's basically to strengthen the communication system of the cell phone company.
And do we charge for those, for permitting those?
Yes. It's revenue generating. They pay to us for all the installation. In some cases, we remove the pole and we make the foundations bigger. So they pay for our crews to do the work. And then once it's installed, then we generate revenue, lease space, approximately $1,000 per year per location.
Now, is this the same issue? I know there's a bill in the State Senate, the Ben Hueso bill, that would prevent us from having discretion and would limit the fee to $250.
Yes, that's Bill 649, if I'm not mistaken. We are working with the mayor's office, with city attorney, and we have provided our comments. Yes, it's the same bill. Frankly, the bill hasn't come forward because of City of Los Angeles, because we have worked with every single one of them. They're extremely happy with the cooperation that they've seen from our department. But I think throughout the state, they had difficulty working with different cities and municipalities. The other thing is that our city, we own our street lighting infrastructure, and it's separate from the utility company. In a lot of other smaller cities in Southern California, utility companies partly own and operate the street lights. So because of all those challenges, I think this whole Bill 649 has been introduced. I hear very soon we are going to have a resolution on this, a decision on this.
You hear that we're going to have a resolution?
On the 649.
So it's
going to be
worked out in our favor?
Yeah. We don't know. It doesn't look like it, based on the last word that I've heard from the city attorney. But I know the city is working on it as we speak, providing comments, but we'll see what happens.
Okay, is our lobbyist working on it?
I think so.
Okay, well, maybe I'll follow up with that.
I think so.
What's that? Yeah, I'm concerned about it. And if it does pass the way it is with the $250 cap, how much is that going to cost us a year?
Well, we generate approximately $1,000 revenue per location annually. So if it passes the way it's written, and I think there is there's some room for negotiations, if I'm not mistaken, even if it passes the way it is. But if it passes at 250, we're looking at $750 per location, less revenue for the city.
750 per location.
Per
We
location.
do about 500 locations a year. It's about $3.5 million or
Yes.
three
Yes.
and three quarters million
Yes.
dollars a year.
It is going to be a huge impact. Going forward, we're looking at 3,000 additional installations for the next 2-3 years per cell phone company. So it is a
It's
huge.
a heck of a lot more than that.
Yes.
So you're talking about 3,000 per cell phone company, 5 cell phone companies.
Exactly. That's what we hear. Now, we don't know if all of them are going to come
15,000.
forward. Yeah.
What's that?
We don't know if all of them are going to come forward with the small cell technology, but that's what we hear from them right now. Every single one of them, they say, we have plans for up to 3,000 installations going forward. It is going to have a huge impact, the bill.
Has that been quantified, the impact? I mean, I think, let me put it this way. I think it's very important to spell, I mean, I'm doing the math in my head, but for you to spell it out on paper and make sure that that's part of what's going to our Sacramento lobbyists, those exact numbers, because if they're not readily available, then they're not helping our case.
Yes. We have done that through the mayor's office and the city attorney's office, but we will try to reach out again, Norma, and do it again.
Okay.
Norma
Well,
has
I'd
been
like to see those numbers, because maybe I'll make a call myself to some of these folks.
I will do that.
Okay.
Sure.
I mean to dwell on that one, so go ahead. Sorry.
So page 4 is another popular program, the EV charging stations that we've installed throughout the city. We have installed 82 EV charging stations year to date. And now, as part of this year's plan, we have funding and a program to install 50 additional. And the way we install those EV charging stations is we basically divide it among all the council offices. So approximately each council office today should have approximately 5 or 6 installations, and the map basically shows all the installations. Again, we work with all your staff, with all the council member staff to identify locations for this year's program or even following year. This has been extremely popular. Since last year, I think we had 30 installations, and we looked at the usage. What was the number, Norma? 12,000? About 12,000 uses we identified for 30 locations that we had installed throughout the city.
If I can, Mr. Chair, thank you, Ed, for the presentation. I'm actually fired up over these EV stations and using your existing infrastructure to tap into by expanding more. I would like to see, I know you just mentioned you're about to deploy another 50 this fiscal year. I would like to see more position in the highly disadvantaged, impacted communities as it relates to the environment. CD7, 15, CD14, 6, sorry, Nuri. Actually, I meant 6. I meant to say 6, not 7. Because, no, I mean, yeah, my bad. So anyhow, these are EJ communities that I think we need to do everything we can to lower emissions. 1, and 2, as an HMD board member, how can we help with solidify some funding and or leaning on our state partners, ARB? 80% of our emissions come from mobile sources, i.e. cars and trucks. So I know as the mayor's moving and the city council moving towards a sustainable future, I like where the department's heading in this direction, but like to see us do more.
Yes, we are fully on board with what you just mentioned, Councilman. And actually, our Mayor Garcetti, last time we spoke about this, he said, I want you to install 1,000 per year. So we are willing to do it. By the way, the funding for this program, just wanted to clarify, we get about $4,000 rebate from the Water and Power for every location. And the rest of it is where we need the funding. And right now, the funding in the budget has been identified, I think is in the MICLA. And as part of the FSR, we have to move the funding. But if there is additional funding available, the opportunities are huge. We have 215,000 streetlights throughout the city. We can't install on every single one of them, but there is so much opportunities to go out there and identify the locations, and people are using them. So we are fully on board, Council.
I would just encourage working with our Sacramento lobbyist, Andrew Antwine, who can work and lobby some of the state funding to come down to the city to help deploy more of these. Thank you.
Yes. Why are these not cost recovery? Or are we charging for the electricity?
Yes, we are. What we charge, assuming it's at the curb, and it used to be a meter. So we removed the meter, we installed the EV charging station. So the meter used to charge $1, let's say, per hour. Now we have to up it to $2 per hour. So whatever revenue comes, part of it goes to the DOT because of the meter. It used to be a meter. Most of it goes to Department of Water and Power because we're using power during that time. And then the rest of it is for my staff to be able to keep up and maintain the location. So
I guess what I'm asking, because I know that companies like ChargePoint and these others, they go to businesses and they offer to put in these things for free, and then they get their cost paid for by the cost of the energy. So if they're able to do it that way, how come it's not working out for us?
We worked with ChargePoint. We worked with actually this is a pilot program. We have 82 locations. It's at the beginning. By the way, no other city in the whole country has this many installations attached on street lighting poles. No. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3, but not 82. So we worked with ChargePoint. Initially, they gave us 1 or 2. Then after that, we had to purchase them. And then we are working with 2 other manufacturers, and we are open to even see other manufacturers to see how we could bring the cost down. The cost used to be approximately $8,000 per location for the equipment. Now it's getting closer to $5,000. But then we have to kind of build in the maintenance aspect of it, the vandalism aspect of it to it also. So we're looking at that, but we are open if we can
How long does it take to make back the 5,000? Like, what's the return on investment?
I don't know. How long would that take? We can look into it.
I'm just curious, like when you go to the mall and they have those put in, are they subsidizing it at the same rate that we are, or is it not being subsidized? Or
well, the mall, there is no parking.
They don't have the extra dollar for the. I get that for the parking, but in terms of the actual cost of the electricity.
Yes, in the malls will be just actual cost of the electricity. But for us, it's a little bit different. But still, I think we can do the calculation and to see how long it will take us, assuming it's being used all the time. Again, it all depends where it is also. There are some areas that are not being used that much, but there are some areas that are extremely popular. So we are trying to identify those popular locations as much as we can. But we are open. We can look into it. We can again propose to manufacturers to see how we can get them for free, or maybe actually closest to the $4,000 rebate that we're getting from Water and Power, because that is already set. Water and Power has been cooperating with us really good. So we can maybe start at that point and then see how much more we can do.
Great, thank you. Martinez?
We need to do more to make sure some of these stations are in overburdened communities. But what is your maintenance component to this? Because I struggled for months to try to get one of our charging stations fixed at the Orange Line, and I know it wasn't yours, but it was a battle between DWP and sanitation as to who's responsible for the station and who was going to get it fixed. And I was inundated with email requests asking me to fix the station. So, I mean, I agree we need more, but I also need to make sure they're going to be maintained and they're going to be repaired in a timely manner, so that people who use them don't get so frustrated when they're broken and not taken care of.
Yes, I hear you, Councilwoman. It's not us.
It wasn't you, or
it
else
was
you
one
would've
of
heard from me.
ours.
But it literally took months to, between all the finger pointing and people saying, "Hey, you have this charging station at the orange line, and it's inoperable because no one will take responsibility for fixing it."
What we do as part of our purchase is a 5-year maintenance plan embedded into the purchase price. So again, we will be responsible for it, but we ask the manufacturers to go out there and do the maintenance. So as part of that whole vision, we have built in the maintenance for at least 5 years, and the units are warranted for 5 years.
It's just frustrating when we cannot sustain our own infrastructure. It's falling apart, and then we want to add more, but we never have a plan to maintain it.
We always have to have plans for maintaining. Yes, I agree.
Any other questions on this? Okay.
Should I go to the next?
Please.
Okay, this is a challenge, and I just wanted to make sure I bring it to the committee. As you know, Proposition 218 passed back in 1997, and our entire assessment since 1997 has been frozen, and we've been operating with basically the same revenue for the last 20 years. Well, we've had our LED program, we had this revenue generating programs, but we are at a point that based on our forecast in the next 2-3 years, we are going to basically run out of money if we don't do something. So we started working with a consultant to send out some ballots out, some sample ballots, some surveys, to see if there is support in City of Los Angeles to include a CPI or an increase to our existing frozen assessments. They send out about 40,000 surveys, and we received approximately 60% plus in favor of this kind of an increase. The increase is going to be very small. But if we decide to go forward with it, we're looking at more than 500,000 parcels in the City of Los Angeles that we have to send out mail-in ballots. So it's not going to be on a state or local ballots. It's going to be a mail-in ballot that needs to be returned. So right now where we are basically working with CAO, Mayor's Office, and also an outside consultant to basically verify our projections for next 2-3 years. And once that is verified and we get the go-ahead, we are going to get a consultant on board and start this whole process, which will include a lot of education, community PR, working with the council officers, neighborhood councils, to basically introduce the idea, and then have a ballot maybe within year and a half from now will be sent out to all the parcels that have streetlights in front of their parcel. This is a challenge, but I wanted to put as one of our top priorities and bring it to your attention.
So the ballot has to be citywide? I mean, you can't, what happens if you don't get a majority of votes, but certain areas or streets or assessment districts want to get it? What happens if the answer is no? We just continue to lose money, or do we actually have to shut down the lights in some situations?
Well, we won't be able to continue to maintain our infrastructure. Then either we have to get general fund money or some other source of money to be able to continue. As far as the ballots, the way Proposition 218 is written is based on the return ballots. So even if we send 500,000 out and we receive, let's say, 10 back, and from the 10, 7 say yes and 3 say no, I think we're good to go. That's the way Proposition 218 is written. Obviously, that was just an example. It's not going to happen, but it's based on the returned ballots that we receive back in the mail.
So there's no way that people can just vote on their assessment and whether their assessment gets maintained. They have to vote on the entire city.
Yes, it's one district. Yes, and it's very clear. We're working with the city attorney on this, and the law is very clear, so we can't separate it. It's all one district that has been frozen. And what you see that comes to the council are the new districts, which are small districts that are being created. All the new ones since 1997 do have a CPI built in as part of the assessment. But whatever was before 1997, which is more than 550,000 parcels, there is no CPI, and it's been frozen since 1997.
And you're not just making up for the cost of the fixed asset, but you're talking the cost that needs to be inflated is the maintenance cost. And
that's correct. That's correct. So that was a challenge. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Next one. Sorry, I'm taking so much time.
No, that's why we invite you once a quarter to do, because we want to make sure we cover the issues in your department that don't get covered under the normal course of the yes/no decisions we have to make here. So.
And thank you for inviting us. It's a great opportunity. So page 6 is really exciting. It's the whole connected streetlight system idea and the beginning or genesis of the smart city, which we think will be using basically street lighting infrastructure throughout the city to bring information back. Well, the first phase of this entire program is to deploy, we call them remote controls. Our mayor calls them information beacons, which I like a lot. Where it's going to bring information back from every street light in the city to us, to our desktop, to know whether the light is operating, and we can control the light, and also how much power is being used, all the information. So we're in the process of deploying that throughout the city. We've done about 27,000 of these deployments, and you see the map here. Obviously, we have a long ways to go. But I think as we go forward, we can also start introducing sensors to be attached to those controls throughout the city, whether it's a temperature sensor, humidity, maybe gunshot detection, maybe some cameras, different ideas that we are exploring as the technologies are coming our way. Then we'll be able to, in a perfect world, bring information from all over the city, whatever we need, to a desktop, and then do analytics with it. Obviously, ITA will be involved with this down the road. Right now, we don't have the sensors, but we're pretty sure that it will be using the same communication devices that we're deploying right now for street lighting monitoring. So this is really exciting. We're at the beginning of this program. We are thinking we'll do some test installation of sensors next year or two, and then hopefully after that the technology will catch up, and we'll have the infrastructure in place to do even more sensors. Now again, gunshot detection is something I'm really pushing the manufacturers to come up with. We can easily install those in high crime areas of the city. We can, I think, easily connect it through 911. And once a gunshot is detected, 911 can identify the closest black and whites and send them right there within a minute. And we don't need someone to call us. So those are some of the things that sky's the limit, frankly, with this sensor. So it's not here yet, so I don't have much to show, but the conversation is continuing with manufacturers, and I'm hoping within next year or two we'll have a lot more information to share. And lastly is our street lighting maintenance and repair. I just wanted to have that there. We do a lot of maintenance, even though it's been reduced because of the LED. Those are the numbers. The graph down there shows the turnaround time for repair response time for a single light out, which is again one of the best in the whole country, so I wanted to show that to you also. With that, I am done. So.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the presentation and the good work that you continue to do. And any additional additional questions on this item?
Sure, sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll move to,
Could I just say for the record, thank you so much to your department because you're always responsive. And I know there's a lot of replacement in my district that's going on. So that's because we have a lot of old infrastructure. But thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
so we've done 4 and 6. Mr. Spencer, would you read the last item we have left to do is item 5. Could you read that into the record, please?
Item number 5 is a report from the Board of Public Works relative to the authority to request a loan from the Public Works Trust Fund for the Taylor Yard River Park. And this has also been referred to the Arts, Entertainment, Parks and River Committee.
Okay, and I think we have Ms. Catherine Doherty from, or no? Who do we have? Sorry. Dealer's choice.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Chris Johnson with the Bureau of Engineering. Taylor Yard Parcel G2 is a 42-acre site that formerly hosted a Union Pacific Railroad yard. The site was identified as an opportunity area, and the City Council adopted Los Angeles River Revitalization Master Plan and the Army Corps of Engineers Ecosystem Feasibility Study, referred to as the Arbor Plan. The city recently purchased the site, with escrow having closed this past March. The site is known to be contaminated, and the city is working with the Department of Toxic Substances Control to further investigate and possibly remediate the site to ecological or recreational standards. Now that the site is owned by the city is evaluating potential interim and long-term uses that may be consistent with the Arbor Plan. In order to accomplish the contamination site assessments and interim and long-term planning, the city has applied for and received a State Coastal Conservancy Proposition 1 grant in the amount of $2 million. As this is a reimbursement grant, the BOE has recommended that a loan of $700,000 from the Public Works Trust Fund to be used to front fund this work. The Board of Public Works adopted the BOE report with certain recommendations subject to City Council approval. Those recommendations would be to authorize the loan from the Public Works Trust Fund, Fund number 834, Department 50, in the amount of $700,000 to front fund the Taylor Yard River Park for the until sufficient grant funds are received to repay the loan. Their recommendation number 3, requiring council approval, is authorize the Director of the Office of Accounting to release the Public Works Trust Fund loan as soon as a copy of the grant award is received from the Bureau of Engineering. The recommendation number 4 is authorize the Director of the Office of Accounting to assess and collect monthly interest on the loans at the rate that the Office of Finance is using to allocate interest to various investment pools. Any unpaid interest at the end of the year will be added to the principal amount of the loan. Recommendation number 5 would be to authorize the Director of the Office of Accounting to transfer $700,000 from Public Works Trust Fund number 834, Department 50, to Engineering Special Services Fund, Fund 682, Department 50, and to appropriate said amount to the Engineering Special Services Fund, Fund number 682, Department 50, to a new appropriation unit entitled Taylor Yard G2, and to make payments for completion of the Taylor Yard River
Let me
Park.
stop you there, because we see all the recommendations here, and I
Very
know
good.
my colleagues are on a rush, so rather than go through them all, just wanted to ask a question or two, and because we have to get going. So the loan doesn't get paid back until the entire park has been completed. And is that spring of 19?
It gets paid back once the reimbursement funds are received, and that's 2019 is when we will complete that work plan for the $2 million.
So is it going to be paid back before the 19 or after?
It will be paid back by the 19th.
Okay. And does the loan impact other pending requests to borrow from the trust fund that might be throughout the rest of the city?
For that, I'd probably call on Dr. Fernando Campos with the Board of Public Works.
Okay.
Hi, council members. Good afternoon. Fernando Campos with the Board of Public Works Executive Officer. To answer your question, it will not impact. We already baked that into our calculations. Right now, our funding policy is about 25%. This loan would put us around 29%, which is towards the higher end of our range, 25 to 30% at max. If the funds, as discussed in this testimony, that they would come back on an interim basis, as soon as that money gets returned or refunded or reimbursed from the state of California, then that money should be transferred back to the Public Works Trust Fund. That would allow us to start allowing other loans. If no funds were to be paid back until 2019, it would have an impact in terms of how many other loans we can say yes to. Our goal is to make sure that as soon as those interim reimbursements get back, hopefully on a quarterly basis or at least at the latest semi-annual, once the monies get reimbursed, that money would be then returned back to the Public Works Trust Fund.
I'm just trying to get at the big question. Are we edging out a lot of other possibilities, or do you think that all the things that obviously there's the pending ones, but then potential future ones that may come up in the next year or two?
It definitely is becoming more and more difficult to say yes to these requests. So right now, our current loans are about $27 million outstanding in our Public Works Trust Fund. As a whole, our balance is about $125 million. So we are getting very close to that 30% rule and policy that we have. Right now, I do advise our board to proceed with caution. I believe that it's okay to move forward with the $700,000 as is. We have it baked into the formula. But once we hit that 30% mark, I will be making a recommendation, hard no, to our Board of Public Works to not authorize future loans. But for this request, we are fine.
Okay. A little bit concerned, but okay. And the deadline for proposals was last Monday, right, or something for...
Yes, we sent out a task order solicitation to one of our on-call pre-qualified consultant list. Proposals were received on Monday. We received 5 proposals.
5, okay. Great. Any additional questions, colleagues?
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
If you just can educate me on the Public Works Trust Fund amount, how much do we have in it today, where we at, how does this loan impact the trust fund?
So currently, again, Dr. Campos with the Board of Public Works Executive Officer, currently our Public Works Trust Fund balance is approximately $125 million. Just to be very clear, that Public Works Trust Fund is a depository. It's a repository for funds where developers, when they make payments for fees, fines, surcharges that we collect, they go into this Public Works Trust Fund. Not all monies are available to be used for other purposes other than the purpose that we collected for. Of that $125 million, we have about $27 million outstanding in loans. Our current policy right now is to lend out up to 25%, not to exceed 30%. So this puts us at around 29% as a whole.
Yeah.
We're very 1%. So it's about maybe $1.2 million cushion is what we have right now.
What are we doing on the paybacks? How are we knocking on doors?
We have been aggressively asking for paybacks. So about 2 years ago, our outstanding balance at that time was about $26 million. We brought it down to about $18 million. Over the last year, City Council and our Board of Public Works has both approved loans of about $17 to $18 million. So the monies that we did collect over the last year or two, we've actually lent them out, which is exactly what we wanted to do. So we want projects that are funding public works infrastructure type of projects, that money get reinvested into those types of projects. I agree with you, Councilman. If the faster we receive that money back, we can lend out other loans and we can get other projects out on the streets. Unfortunately, we do have one loan that's outstanding with the CAO's office for about $10 million with a 20-year repayment plan with no repayment option in between. So therefore, CAO is authorized not to submit that full payment until 10 years. We are around year 8 or 9 of that loan, so we still have another 12 years before we can collect. And that represents about 34, 35% of the outstanding balance.
Okay. Seeing no additional questions, I'm going to recommend that we approve the recommendations in the Board of Public Works report. Without objection, that is so ordered. Mr. Espinosa, is there anything else pending before us? Then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.